New York, the Empire State, famous for the city that never sleeps, a global center of culture, trade, and commerce, a city bustling with a diverse populace, connecting millions through a mass transit system, and yet, a short 5 hours from Manhattan's busy streets lies a world wild and vastly different from the hurried ways of urban life, a place that relatively few have ever seen or ventured. Long ago, when the world was young, the mountains rose, valleys fell, rivers flowed within them, and the elements carved these ancient rocks. The mountains called, but none lived near enough to hear. Still, their call resounded across the land. Centuries, millennia passed before mankind set foot upon the peaks. Tucked away in a small corner of North America, with few unique resources or other cause for inquiry, these mountains remain mostly unexplored after much of the surrounding area was developed. Even the Native American tribes were wary of this wilderness. The Iroquois and Mohawks would insult the Algonquin tribes living in the Northland, calling them bark eaters, or Adirondacks in their native tongue. In 1872, Verplanck Colvin began a massive survey of this mountainous wilderness that would become the Adirondack Park. Colvin's efforts revealed 46 mountains over 4,000 feet in elevation. Although subsequent surveys have revealed 4 of these peaks to be less than 4,000 feet, these original 46 remain the official list of the 46er Club. At the turn of the 20th century, 3 unlikely companions answered the mountain's call. In the summer of 1918, Adirondack guide Herbert Clark led brothers Bob and George Marshall to the summits of Whiteface Mountain, and later Marcy, Algonquin, and Iroquois. In 1920, inspired by the writings of Russ Carson, the group set out to climb the remaining 4,000-foot peaks. The mountains drew together these 2 young brothers from New York City and a North Country guide twice their age from Saranac Lake. On June 10, 1925, the men summited Mount Emmons, the 46th of their 4,000-foot ascents, and the trio became the first 46ers.
I've always been intrigued with the Marshalls and Herbert Clark, how it was a couple of rich New Yorkers, really, it's that simple. But they came up to the Adirondacks and they decided to make up their own rules and become North Country boys and hook in with Herbert Clark. It was a very, very different kind of soul. But they escaped the city and they loved hiking. I loved reading about how Bob Marshall made lists of all of his climbs and just how it got inside of him, and how both he and George idolized Herb Clark. During an era where class society was so huge, so for all of the rich elite in New York to think that these guys were hanging out with some, who they would call this country bumpkin from Saranac Lake, yet these 2 guys, these 2 educated New Yorkers, idolized Herb Clark because they knew what he offered them, a new world that they fully embraced.